Welcome today. This is another opportunity for the Lubbock Chamber of Commerce to talk about the importance of voting for Proposition A for both now and during early voting, which concludes on May 1st as well as on May 5th during the general election date. We here today have Jake Webb, who is a great Chamber of Commerce volunteer. Not only is he a chairman of our Legislative Affairs Committee, but he's also part of our Young Professionals. He's obviously also spoken in front of City Council on this very subject about the Auditorium Coliseum. And he just last weekend had a great letter to the editor talking about why it's important to him about the Auditorium Coliseum being abandoned and going forward using this responsible conversation. So, Jake, thank you very much for joining us today, and tell us why the abandoning of the Auditorium Coliseum is important to you.
Well, Eddie, and thanks for having me. It's really about local tax dollars and being good stewards of our local tax dollars. I'm of the opinion that government should run like a business, and if a business sees an asset that's losing $600,000 to $700,000 a year and is in need of $14–15 million in repairs, that's a problem, and I think we should address it.
Well, and I think most of our members and most of the folks who pay taxes in this community would agree with you 100% in that respect. And I think one of the reasons that people probably don't see it that way is there's some passion and some love for the facility and even a monument. I mean, it still means something to you in that regard, I bet.
Absolutely, but the way I look at it, a 1982 Ford Mustang is a classic. 1982 Honda Civic is a relic, and trying to market it as anything but a 1982 Honda Civic is misleading. The way I look at it, the Coliseum and the Auditorium was at one point a great landmark in Lubbock, but make no mistake, it is not a classic; it's a relic, and I think that we need to let it go, and we need to make way for bigger and better things, and there are some options in the works to do that privately without any expense to the taxpayers.
And Jake, that's an excellent example about the car examples between being a classic and a relic. I bet you there's even probably something about homeowners and taxes that you probably have an example about.
Absolutely. Well, by my analysis, the portion of my property taxes that go to the city, it would take about 1,806 of my houses just to cover the operating loss for these facilities last year alone. And that loss was even greater the 2 years prior. So when you really put it in perspective and think about it that way, I think there's a lot better uses of our tax dollars than continuing to put it towards the Coliseum and Auditorium.
And I think that's great in that respect. And speaking of that, and if indeed the election is successful, that we do vote for this proposition to do away with the Auditorium Coliseum. I know that Texas Tech has some good plans because the land reverts back to them, and it's obvious that we can't sell it back to Tech, as a lot of people suggested. But why else would that be important for that property, that land, to go back to Texas Tech?
Well, Texas Tech issued a statement last week regarding that, and they've agreed to cover the demolition costs, and they've agreed to incorporate that into their long-term plan for the development and the growth of Texas Tech. So I think that building could serve Tech a lot better than it can serve the Lubbock community, and they're going to take the burden and the expense off of the taxpayers locally. And so I see that as kind of a solution to a pretty big problem that doesn't really have any other viable options.
Well, just like your great example of the classic versus the relic, and then also especially you're talking about the tax dollar savings, there's a lot of tax dollars that from start to finish of this that annually will save that money, and then we'll save from the repairs, because I really even think that $14 million is probably underestimated, because they don't know once they get in there and start making all the ADA upgrades how much it's going to cost them, and even the roof itself, that would cost a lot of money to repair as well. And then of course Texas Tech, whatever they do with it, I really trust that whatever Texas Tech does with it is going to be better, and it's going to enhance that part of the campus, and it's going to make everything in Lubbock for us to be proud of, and I bet you agree with that as well.
Absolutely. Well, I've never seen a commercial construction project finish on budget, so I can definitely see 14 million, even 15 million being on the conservative estimate end of what it's going to cost to repair. And you're right, it's definitely going to benefit Texas Tech, and they're going to be able to be a better steward of that property than we are.
Well, Jake, I really appreciate you coming here today and expressing your side of this story. And I think from you, I think it means a lot coming from being a young professional and being an established banker and an established business person in this community. I would hope that folks understand exactly where you're coming from, because I certainly do. So thank you again for being here, and we appreciate it. And we just want to remind everybody that early voting, again, goes through May 1st. And May 5th is Saturday, the election day. So if you don't get out to do early voting, or if you wait till May 5th, please make sure that you vote for Prop A, because we think it's important for us to take the responsible way forward and do away with the Auditorium Coliseum. Jake, thank you again.
My pleasure. Thanks, Eddie.